Welcome in, everybody. Let's dive right into it. This is a bit of a specialty episode. It's just news and goings-ons, basically. It's a pretty niche kind of episode, so it's really just more for me than anything. So, first off, it's not too big of a deal, but I thought I would start off by announcing that according to feedspot.com, which is a database and review site for podcasts and podcasters, this show, Sci-fi Unchained, has been ranked 13th overall in the genre of science fiction out of 134 podcasts of the same ilk. Now that's a fairly decent accomplishment, right? But to be honest, we are nowhere near what I have planned for the show. I mean, there are a few things in the works that will really prim and polish the show and give it leagues better quality, a more heavy social media presence, and audience interaction overall. I love communicating with the audience and getting feedback and personal correspondence. You guys can email me, hit me on Facebook, Instagram, whatever you guys want to do. I really enjoy it. That being said, I'd love to get more guests on here as well. Some dedicated background music for every episode, and eventually some video episodes as well. So to all of you out there who have stuck it out with me through this journey thus far, thank you so very much. I would not do this if I didn't love it, and if I didn't want to have these kinds of conversations for and with you all out there listening. Okay, so now that the sappy part is over, on to some bigger and more important sci-fi happenings. So firstly, there's a pretty big deal going on with Warhammer 40k at the moment. Games Workshop has done some serious lore changing with the Adeptus Custodes. Previously, before this recent change, the Adeptus Custodes were the bodyguard faction of the Emperor of Mankind, and the Emperor had personally shaped and trained each and every one of these himself. And they were all dudes. And now Games Workshop is saying that there are women Custodes. And there's a ton of lore reasons why they can't be women. So it's some pretty substantial lore changes to one of a lot of people's favorite Imperium factions. And there was some pretty immediate backlash to this change. I mean, just like the mass of fans of any major franchise suffering from some indignant retcons over the years, right? The Star Wars fan base, Lord of the Rings, Doctor Who. The majority of fans are livid when this kind of stuff happens. Including, the Warhammer 40k's live action show coming in the next year. Its executive producer and possible lead actor, Henry Cavill. He's mad, or so the reports claim. Now he says, or someone is reporting that he says, that he is threatening to walk away from the live action project entirely. Now, this is probably one of the worst things Games Workshop can do. And they're doing it to try and appeal to people outside of their fan base ahead of the show's announcement. And studios do this to try and get as many people drawn in to consume the product as possible. And that's why they're leading with those big changes. They're going to put those changes at the forefront of what they're trying to do. So if the live action Warhammer 40K project, if its main characters were from the Adeptus Custodes, let's say, then they're making this change to try and have a female main character, which they would not be able to do. Now, they can have a female main character outside of the Custodes, if it's a Sister of Battle or a Sister of Silence or one of the Assassinorum characters. There's plenty of women in Warhammer 40k, just not in the Custodes faction. So it's something that could be solved very easy. Just stop making retcons. Now, this kind of thing has happened repeatedly with Star Wars, Marvel, Rings of Power, and it's never worked out well for those franchises in the end. So I have no idea why Games Workshop saw this precedence and thought that this was still a good idea. I mean, it seems like people among their own ranks thinks that this is a terrible idea because there's some dissension amongst the higher-ups, including the Games Workshop CFO, who has sold 2/3 of her own shares of the company amidst this backlash. And she's not the only board member to do so. That's pretty telling. If your company does something so bad, and you as the chief financial officer say, that was bad enough for me to start abandoning ship, it's really bad look. Alright, so Star Wars. Moving on to Star Wars. The Bad Batch is coming to a close with its series finale coming up here pretty soon, and this whole season 3 has been kind of underwhelming in general. And I've come to the sad conclusion about this entire show that I have had about previous projects from both Disney and Disney, Star Wars, and Marvel, and that this is a purely transitional show, meaning that the studio did this project just so it could lead to what they really want to focus on, the show or movie that they really want to put out there as their flagship project, their biggest show with the most focus, and it'll probably be their Rey movie or trilogy, whatever it's going to be. And I hate when this happens, because like I said, both Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars have done this, where they just chunk out garbage, basically, and call it roses, right? Call it just the pinnacle of art. But really, the fans can kind of see through all that and understand that, oh, this was only done so you could set up this next big thing. It's very disingenuous, and I don't like it at all. And we also got a surprise couple of trailers about a week or two ago for the Tales of the Empire that is coming out on May 5th, Star Wars Day. This will be following the same writing scheme that we had with Tales of the Jedi. We get a total of 6 episodes, 3 of which follow the journey of one character, and the other 3 following another. Both characters, Barriss Offee and Morgan Elsbeth, deal with their transitions from the end of the Republic era into the Imperial era and their lives during the reign of the Empire. Now, I doubt that these will be as captivating as the stories we got with Ahsoka and Dooku in Tales of the Jedi, mostly because the things that made the trailers good for this show were the appearances of characters other than the ones that the episodes are revolving around. And I do think that doing the mini-series like these are, rather than but an actual continuation of, they could make the Bad Batch longer. Hell, do another season of Rebels. I don't care, but it's a rather big effort to keep the fan base that the studio knows it has, that heavily follows the animated shows and loves to lore dive like crazy. The studio knows what it needs to do, and this proves that. Doing Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, having a short, super half-assed show like The Bad Batch, the studio knows it needs to do these things to keep the fan base interested, to keep them coming back. Other than that, I don't think that the studio really cares much about what they're doing with these series. They're all focused on their live action movies in series. Now, those are the baskets that all the eggs are put into very unashamedly. And I could continue on this tirade with Star Wars, but you guys don't have another 4 or 5 hours just to listen to little old me. This next thing is not science fiction, but Shogun. Really quick, I just gotta put out a big shout out to Hulu, Hulu/Disney Plus, I guess nowadays. Oh, buddy, is this such a great show? If you haven't heard of or haven't seen Shogun yet, do yourself a huge favor. Go and check it out. It's revolving around a very pivotal point in Japanese history, and I can't sing its praises enough. It's a stupidly well put together show. It's really great. Now, the next thing that will probably impact the genre in one way or another, I think, is recently there has been a ban on non-compete agreements that has been put forward by the Federal Trade Commission here in the U.S. Now, this would basically keep companies from telling their employees that if those employees leave the company, they cannot work for any of their competitors for X amount of years. And where this applies to science fiction, it could potentially free up some very talented screenwriters, directors, audio and video engineers, whoever is needed to do some really great shows and movies on platforms that might be competing with their current or previous employer, depending on how their contract works. Right? Especially if they're doing short-form contract work and, they're being forced to sign a non-compete, which is ridiculous, but it does happen. It could also loosen some regulation in the gaming industry. I mean, we could see talent that used to populate companies like Blizzard, Bungie, 343, Bethesda, even Games Workshop and Riot. We could see people like that move more immediately to where they're needing to be in order to make the next best thing. It could even affect authors and novelists, book writers, people like Karen Travis, who wrote one of my favorite overall series of all time, the Star Wars Republic Commando series. She's come out, I think, since 2009, since her last release of the series. She said, look, I can't continue because they're making all of these changes to canon and to the lore, and it directly contradicts what I'm writing in the story and with the characters, and I just can't continue. Now, it might get a bit more muddy with the details, and it might be more of a copyright thing that she wouldn't be able to, continue on with those stories. But there are spin-offs. There are non-canonical stories that are put out all the time. So, I mean, it's possible that people like Karen Traviss could go back and finish up abandoned storylines or characters that they were forced to kind of waylay or put to the side because, whatever big company owned the franchise or the IP said, well, we're going to go in a different direction. All right, last bit of business. There was a recent Reddit poll asking which streaming service was the best single streaming service for science fiction. Amazon Prime came in at number 1 by a really wide margin. We had Netflix coming in at number 2 and Disney Plus coming in at number 3. I agree with this listing fairly decent enough. If you just stroll through Amazon Prime, you'll find a ton of older sci-fi movies and really off-brand and clunky titles and projects. Velociraptor and the word pastor put together. Velocipastor. One of my favorite examples of this. It is the cheesiest, corniest, made in somebody's backyard movie that is on a major streaming platform. And it's amazing. It's so great. It's hilarious. Just have a couple of drinks and go and watch that. You'll thank me. It's so stupid. It's the stupidest, corniest thing. But Prime also has a lot of foreign films as well. So definitely go out and just peruse through what Amazon Prime has to offer in terms of sci-fi titles. It's pretty extensive. If it's not free, whatever you find, it's probably around $2 to $5 if it's not new, so not horrible considering new things go around for like $20-$30 at the store. Yeah, I'll pay $5 for an hour and a half, 2-hour flick that's I've never heard of. It's got good reviews, good looking cast. Sure, why not? But that is all I had for today, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you more than you can possibly know. And stick around for more Sci-Fi Unchained. But for now, live long and prosper, my friends. And may the Force be with us all.